Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo. Bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. This is Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful, book-loving neighborhood of Reedville, the loveliest neighborhood in all of Boston. We are so delighted and so very honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by introducing you to the coolest authors, the funnest stories, the wildest adventures that you can share with your family. Help us grow our mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Amazon Music, Audible, CastBox, YouTube. Wherever you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. Really wonderful show for you today. First up, Margaret Gurevich is here to celebrate her new middle grade novel, Yasha's Amazing Bar Mitzvah. And later in the show, we'll take a listen back to a conversation we had with author-illustrator Jeffrey Brown celebrating his book, Once Upon a Space-Time. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by the Fred the Snake series, written by Dr. Peter Cotton. I just got back from the COSPA National Education Conference. 1,500 school leaders from across the country. And I have to tell you, one of the biggest smiles at our booth came from a little snake named Fred. We were sharing the Fred the Snake book series, and again, superintendents and educators were drawn in by the bright, colorful illustration. They'd pick up a book, start flipping through it, and you could just see it. They got it. These are the kinds of stories kids want to read. But you know what really stopped them in their tracks? When I told them that the author, Dr. Peter Cotton, was a world-renowned gastroenterologist and teacher before he began writing children's books. And suddenly it clicked. Here's someone who spent a lifetime helping people, now using the same care, the same curiosity to create stories that help kids feel brave, welcome, and excited to learn. The Fred the Snake series now includes 10 wonderful adventures, from getting mended to going to school to exploring cities and beaches with friends, and every one of them is filled with heart, humor, and connection. We loved having Dr. Peter on Reading with Your Kids, and I can tell you, educators at the COSPA conference love Fred the Snake just as much as we do. So if you're looking for stories your kids will laugh with, learn from, and want to read again and again, meet Fred the Snake. Because with Fred the Snake, the real magic happens when we choose kindness and become a friend. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Follow the River by Ellen Cochran. What would you do if you fell from the sky into the Amazon rainforest? That's not fiction. That's the incredible story behind the book Follow the River by Ellen Cochran. On Christmas Eve 1971, 17-year-old Julianne boarded a plane with her mom in Lima, Peru. The destination was home, a research station deep in the Amazon jungle. But just 20 minutes after landing, disaster struck. Lightning hit the plane, and Julianne was thrown 2 miles through the sky into the rainforest below. When she woke up the next day, she was alone. Her collarbone was broken. Her glasses were gone. She only had one shoe, and she was surrounded by one of the most dangerous jungles on Earth. But Julianne remembered the lessons her scientist parents had taught her and began an unbelievable journey through the Amazon. For 11 days, she walked, survived, and followed the water until she found help. Follow the River is a breathtaking story of courage, resilience, and the incredible strength of the human spirit. If your family loves stories like Hatchet or I Survived, this is one adventure you won't want to miss. Discover Follow the River today, a true story that proves that sometimes the greatest survival tool is hope. Join us right now from somewhere in the beautiful state of New Jersey. Our guest is here today to celebrate her new middle grade novel. It's called Yasha's Amazing Bar Mitzvah. Please welcome to the show, Margaret Gurevich. Margaret, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am great. Is that an illustration of Yasha in your background?
Yes, yes, the extent of my high-tech abilities, but yes.
So tell us about Yasha and this amazing bar mitzvah and what's going on in his life.
So this book takes place in 1986. So with the Mets World Series as the backdrop, because that's when they won the World Series last. I see that, seems like a heavy sigh. Yeah.
Just one name comes to mind, Bucky Dent. There's usually a word in the middle between his names here. And Boston, of course, Boston, the Red Sox lost that series to the Mets. Yeah. And, but we've had a good streak since then. So I'll get over it.
And the Mets, less of a streak since then, but I still love them. They still have my heart. So Yasha moves to the suburbs of New Jersey from Brighton Beach, New York, which was a heavily Russian area. And he has a difficult time because he's one of two Russian kids in his grade. So he has a tough time fitting in, being that it's the Cold War and Rocky Mania is big. And so there's discrimination with that. And then he tries to fit in like it's kind of a wealthier place. And he also tries to fit in with his bar mitzvah because it's not American enough. So it talks about that. And then he befriends an older man named Bernie. And that's where he finds friendship and the courage to be himself.
Awesome. One of the details I just noticed in your background is it looks like Yasha has baseballs on his yarmulke.
Yes. The illustrator was amazing. So yeah, I love like they put like all this like these little details and you knew like not to the Mets with the blue and the orange and the the little baseballs. Yeah, amazing.
So let's talk. I'm very familiar with what a bar mitzvah is, but I imagine that there are some listeners who aren't. They've heard the word. They know it has something to do with the Jewish faith, but what? That's about it. So talk a little bit about what a bar mitzvah is and how important it is in a young man's life.
So it's the celebration when they turn 13, celebrate them like becoming a man, technically. They read from the Jewish Bible, which is the Torah, and they say the prayer, and it's like their induction into, like, I guess the more responsibilities of being Jewish. And they have it for girls as well. And then depending on, like Orthodox places do it at 12 for the girl. Reform would do it at the same age, which is 13. So there's other considerations, but it's for both males and females. And in this book, it's for Yasha. He's a boy. So that's, celebration of his culture and who he is. And yeah.
And being a Russian Jew meant that and an immigrant meant that they probably had to escape persecution in Russia.
Yes. So his family, like mine, came here in 1979 from the former Soviet Union. Yasha is a few years older than I am. So my family, they was my dad's dad. He died a few months after I was born. But when my father was growing up, he was put in the Gulag for a lot of my dad's childhood because he received prayer shawls from the United States. So he was labeled a traitor. And the passports that they had there, like their documentation, they had the religion on it. They said, Jew. And there's a quota with how many Jewish people could get into different universities. Like my mother was telling me a story recently that when she applied, she's retired now, but was a chemical engineer. And when she applied to her program, when she was taking the exam, the head of the program actually came in and he pointed at her and he said, "How many of them have you let in so far?" And he said, "Well, if I let her in, it'll be one." And he's like, then you're done after that. So, and she heard all this and there's a whole, story about how she was coached because, my grandfather who passed away, my mother's father, he was in education and knew so many languages and everything. And he, hired her a tutor. And the tutor said, I know this program and you have to get in at this time so you don't test with this one professor, because if you do, he was not going to let you in because you're Jewish. And so my mom waited to be the first one in because she knew about the quotas and make sure she, said that she was going to go test early. So Yasha's family has a lot of the similar things that we did. And my mom's parents came with us to the United States. My father's mother and his brother stayed in the former Soviet Union. So one of the things in Yasha's books is they have, they send letters back there, and a lot of the stuff is redacted. It was open and redacted by the government. And that's what happened with a lot of letters that we sent to the former Soviet Union, or they sent back to us. We would get things back with a lot of the things blacked out. So there's a lot that my family went through to come here. There's one story that I always tell too, that and Yasha's family had very similar things, that my dad had to go to all the libraries in the county or province, something like that, to prove that he has now one book outstanding before he was allowed to leave. So little things even like that my family experienced. And so with Yasha's family too, one of the things that really struck me and that I wanted to put in the book is that when we came here, even though we fought so hard to come here and we thought of ourselves as Americans, so many people did not. And that's what Yasha experiences also, that people just see you as the country that you came from, and whatever sentiments they have towards that country. And at that time, and the communism at that time, that's what they associate you with. And I feel now too, and I think that's through history, that if you're at war with a country or you dislike a country's politics, you assume that people living in that country are the same, but the people living in that country are being persecuted. They don't have the rights. If they've managed to escape and leave, it's because they want a life that's different. They're not bringing that to the United States, right? And they also don't have the rights. So if you don't agree with a country's politics, I think people need to understand that the people living there, many of them do not agree with it either, but they have no escape. They have no out. That's where they are. So,
I think one of the things that is important for our kids to understand, and hopefully reading a book like Yasha's amazing Bar Mitzvah, having conversations about the book, may help kids understand that, the ordinary person, take, for example, right now, the United States is involved in a war with Iran, and there are lots and lots of folks who are against it. But there's not a whole lot that an ordinary person can do other than say, I don't want this to happen.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm really hoping that people could connect it to different things, right? Like happening now, right? What could individuals do, right? Mm-hmm. And in terms of, if you're talking about Iran, the people there not happy with the regime or anything, it's, I wish as a society, we could see people as just humans and not, and realize that everyone experiences pain, and not just merge them together with their political systems, because they're not one of the same.
Right. Was there anything specific that inspired you to create Yasha and write this novel?
Well, it's funny. I was working in this book in different variations for years, because I always just had this. Originally, I wanted to do something with the 86 Mets, because it's just something that was really, I just remember how I felt back then, and I was 10 years old, and I was just so excited. And I remember seeing all the newspapers, and everyone was a Mets fan. So in this area, obviously not in Boston. So I had wanted to do that. So that's how this started years ago. I want to say 2013 or something, or 2012. But back then I made this, so I kind of based on with the Mets as the backdrop. Mm-hmm. And then I made this the Yasha thing was much different. There was a bully situation. He wanted to teach somebody how to cook. It just was a very different story. Talk about like revisions. And then I had shelved it for a while. And then after I wrote my last book that came out last September, the paperback this past September, October, that was based on, also has some like Russian things in it. That was about a girl who had anxiety and struggles with that, which was based on some of my own struggles that I've had. I just really started revamping this book and just going back and thinking about my experiences and what else I could say about them and what would it be like for somebody, you know, at the time dealing with so many different things and this game that brings people together. So I guess like as I've gotten older, I really wanted to put my own connection of myself, my family, my culture into my books. I mean, when I was younger, like Yasha, I really wanted to shun all of it. Like I just wanted to be thought of as American, and I hated speaking Russian in public. I hated like anything connected to it when I was like a teen, like not, you know, outside the house. In the house, it was fine. Yeah. And I thought, you know, there's other kids I feel that feel the same way. The struggle to fit in, keep your culture, and then this version of Yasha evolve. So
yeah. You know, I can relate to what you're talking about. I had a friend in middle school, a very dear friend, who is Latvian and would speak, and I'd go and visit his house and be with his mom, and he would speak Latvian with his mother. He wouldn't speak it with me, and he wouldn't even tell me what language it was. I just knew it was different. And in fact, I think we all decided that he was German, and but because of his last name. But that's an interesting. I could never understand, and I could never. I don't know if I was able to ever ask him, "Hey, why aren't you cool? I'm just curious. I want to hear what, you know, the language you speak. I think it's cool. I don't want to make fun of you, but I don't think I ever asked him that, and so I never understood why you're so secret."
I wonder if it was the same, right? That he just wanted to fit in and be like everyone else without, because you know what? Like as a teenager, even the littlest things, you know, you don't want to set you apart. Like if your sneakers are different or your jeans are different. And this is you could change your jeans and sneakers. You can't change who you are, you know, right. Nor should you have to. But I mean, you know, you don't like to be different.
Yeah. Yeah. I was different in that when I got to high school, I went from a public school into a, kind of an elite Jesuit high school. And so it was a very different experience, and I didn't fit into the high school. Did great in the elementary school and middle school. Got to high school, and I was really out of place. And I just decided that I was going to lean into being different. And you know, people would make fun of my clothes. I kind of was a wild dresser, and I thought, yeah, the more wild, the better. And it worked out. I loved being at that high school by the time I was a junior. And yeah, it was fun leaning in and being different and having people make fun of you and just go, yeah, I don't care what you think.
That's amazing that you had that confidence. Like I wish, you know, I did. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. I don't know where it came from. I'll be totally honest. I have no idea. Tell me, what is it about the middle grade audiences that you enjoy writing for? Why do you enjoy writing for this audience?
I think it's just such a great age because they're going through so much and trying to figure themselves out and figure out the world. And I feel, especially in this time, a lot of them are just so open and excited to learn about whether it's different cultures or just different information, different things. They like to be immersed in it. So there's like this innocence and worldliness kind of at the same time, with some of them in the desire to learn. And I really like I teach that age group too. I work full time as a teacher as well. I teach English and writing and reading for middle school. So it's just a great age. Like they, certain things, they drive you a little crazy, but they're just so open, and you just see things from different perspectives in a way sometimes that as adults we don't. I mean, we have our opinions formed, a lot of us. I mean, not that we're not open to learning about new things, but as we age, we definitely have our own opinions on things. Mm-hmm. And when you're 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, you're still forming all those. So I think that's really great that they're open to just learning about different things. So
yeah. One of the things that just kind of struck me is that you went from being that teenager who just wanted to fit in and didn't want anybody to know your background, and I'm just an American kid living here in New York City, to now you're celebrating that. And was there something that helped you make that change of perspective?
I don't know if there's one specific incident. I think as I grew older, I started, I guess, in general, becoming more comfortable with who I was. And in that, the culture went into it too, right? Because I started thinking about my family and everything they've been through. And I realized too that, that's all a part of me. So if I'm shunning that part of me, I'm also shunning everything my family went through and who, how I was shaped to become who I was. So I think it's just years of thinking about that and hearing my parents' stories. Because my parents actually, though, when they came here, my dad wanted nothing to do with the former Soviet Union because of everything that he experienced there. So obviously they couldn't not speak in the language because that was their primary language, for a while. But my parents always, when they asked where you were from, when we traveled, they would always be like, New Jersey. And then people would be like, no, where are you from really? And my mom's like, Bergen County. And they'd be like, no. And it would just, she hated it because she wanted to connect and be like, no, but I've lived here now, 20, whatever years at the time, I'm an American, So I feel that was kind of imparted on me too. But as I grew and I saw just heard everything they've been through and their stories, and I just became more comfortable with who I was and realized you don't have to, it doesn't have to be either or, right? You're, a Russian Jewish American, you're wherever you came from, you could hold on to that and also be who you are, and all together it makes the whole you.
Yeah. I used to listen to, and it's probably one reason I enjoy doing podcasts so much, is I would sneak the transistor radio in. And for you young people, that's like a little square radio that you
I know.
put a battery in. I know you know. But I would put it underneath my pillow at night and would listen. And there was a overnight talk show here in Boston that was hosted by a guy named Larry Glick. And he was wonderful. And he was one of those guys that would, bring on the person who was abducted by aliens to tell their stories, and all the people who saw ghosts and everything. And he had an expression. If someone came in and said, "Oh, Russian, Larry, I'm Russian, Jewish American," and he would say, "Nope. You're an American of Russian and Jewish descent." And I love that because it's like, hey, we're all together.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely see that. Mm-hmm.
Can you give us an idea of what you're working on next?
It's still in the early stages, so it's a little bit different. So I can't get into too much, but one of the things I'll say, it's a little bit different, whereas it has a little bit of kind of a magic element, which I normally don't do. It's still very much realistic fiction, but it has a tiny bit of that. Okay. So, yeah.
All right. I'm real curious before I have you go. What do your kids, the kids that you teach, think about their teacher being an author?
A lot of them think it's really cool. And I just had a book launch a few days ago.
Uh-huh.
And a bunch came to support me, which was super nice. And we made it a little bit like a bar mitzvah party. So I played bar mitzvah games with them at it, and I had snacks, and they were excited, like, to hear that I write books, and it's really nice. I get modest about it. Like, sometimes I don't go into a lot of details, but I'm trying to be better at that. But I read them the first chapter, and it's really nice. Like, a lot of them, like, I feel they're really supportive, which is great.
That is great. Let's tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Yasha's amazing bar mitzvah and find out more about you.
So margiewrites.com is my website, and it has all the different places to purchase Yasha, and also talks about me. It has some photos of me as an adorable child. And you could also contact me through that. I love doing school visits and Zooming with audiences. So
awesome. We've had a great time speaking to the author of Yasha's amazing bar mitzvah. It's a new middle grade novel from our guest, Margaret Gurevich. Hey, Margaret, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Hey, this episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by AspireDrinks.com. Hey, I have a quick question for you. Have you ever wanted a little extra energy, but not the kind that makes your heart race or leaves you crashing an hour later? Well, that's exactly why I want to tell you about Aspire Drinks. You'll find them at AspireDrinks.com. Aspire calls itself a healthy energy drink, and honestly, that description really fits. Instead of loading you up with sugar or extreme caffeine, Aspire delivers a gentle, steady boost with 80 milligrams of natural caffeine from green tea and guarana. That's about half the caffeine of most energy drinks, enough to help you stay focused without the jitters or the crash. It's also zero sugar, 0 calories, and 0 artificial additives, which makes it a great choice for parents, teachers, and anyone trying to make healthier choices while still getting things done. And get this, it actually tastes great, light, crisp, and lightly sparkling, with flavors like sweet cherry, raspberry acai, mango lemonade. That's what I love. No heavy aftertaste and easy on the stomach. Aspire is packed with B and C vitamins, biotin, and ginger. And it's vegan, gluten-free, keto-friendly, really designed for real life. And just for Reading with Your Kids listeners, you can get an exclusive discount of 20% off. That's the highest discount available when you shop at AspireDrinks.com and use our promo code READ. That's READ at AspireDrinks.com. Healthy energy done right. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is sponsored by Ramble Office. You know, before I tell you about Ramble Office, let me tell you about what travel used to look like for me. When I take the Reading with Your Kids studio on the road, it was like a lot. I had one box for the mixer, another case for microphones, a satchel for my laptop, cables everywhere. And I always felt like I was forgetting something. That's why Ramble Office really clicked with me. Rambo takes everything I used to juggle, tech gear, personal stuff, and puts it into one smart, great-looking unit that's designed to be a mobile office, not just luggage. Everything has a place. Everything stays protected. And when you get to where you're going, you're ready to work. Instead of digging through bags or repacking your life every time you move, Ramble keeps your setup organized and ready to deploy. Travel days stop being chaos and start being productive. It's sleek, modern, built for people whose work doesn't stop just because they're on the move. And if your job follows you, whether that's podcasting, teaching, consulting, or creating, Ramble is worth a look. Go to RambleOfficeAnywhere.com, all one word, RambleOfficeAnywhere.com. Use the promo code READ, R-E-A-D, and receive 5% off any product. It's exclusive for Reading with Your Kids listeners. Check it out today, RambleOfficeAnywhere.com, promo code READ. Joining us right now from the beautiful city of Chicago, he is a cartoonist, an author, and illustrator, and he is here to talk about his brand new book, Once Upon a Space-Time. Please welcome to the show, Jeffrey Brown. Jeffrey, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
I'm happy to have you here. Jeffrey and I were just talking a little bit about, I said, have you given yourself a title? Are you an author, an illustrator? And he's like, well, usually I talk about being a cartoonist, but sometimes you have to explain things. And we're talking just very briefly about the fact that comics and our perception of comics has really evolved over the past few decades, I think. And I think it's a good thing that it has evolved too.
Yeah, I mean, especially with kids comics, because when I was a kid, I had the superhero comics, basically the same superhero comics that older readers were reading. And now, especially with like the middle grade space, you have books by like Gene Yang and Raina Telgemeier. You have such a wide variety of kids comics, so that this new generation is growing up with comics in a way that I didn't get to.
You're right. When I was, as you're speaking, I'm thinking about the comics that I grew up with. Archie. Archie morphed into Riverdale. I turned that on one night and I'm like, this isn't what I read. And even a lot of the superhero comics have become really dark these days, and it's a fascinating kind of evolution. And has that changed? We're going to talk about Once Upon a Space-Time in a minute, but has that changed the way you create comics and graphic novels?
I mean, I guess so. I started out in my career writing independent adult autobiographical comics, so kind of everyday life, mostly about relationships and real life stuff. But now I have kids, and so it was just kind of this natural progression for me to like go from writing stuff for grown-ups to writing stuff for kids, and then also having kids, then you start to see like the when I go to a bookstore, the books I'm looking at, or when I go to the library, like the books I'm seeing for kids, I'm like, oh, there's all these other books for younger readers. And so the superhero stuff turned dark, but at the same time people started making books for younger readers in a way that like in amounts that they weren't before.
Yeah, cool. So tell us about Once Upon a Space-Time, please.
Yeah, so it's my new science fiction series, the first book in the series, and it's about these two Earth kids, Jide and Petra, and they get kind of picked to join this intergalactic space mission. And the thing is that there's minimal adult supervision on this mission. So there's one human adult and one alien adult, but the alien adult is kind of a goofball and maybe not the most responsible of the adults. And so most of the adult supervision comes from the robots that run the spaceship. And then joining Jide and Petra are a bunch of other kids, but alien kids from all kinds of different planets. And so, the first book kind of follows Jide and Petra in learning to become astronauts on Earth, and then they travel to Mars where they meet up with everyone else that's going to go explore the galaxy with them.
That sounds really, really cool. I love that idea of, kids interacting in a world where most of the adult supervision is coming from robots. I imagine that can create all sorts of mischief and opportunities for you to write about mischief.
Definitely. And so in the robots, they each have their own kind of personalities, and some maybe are a little more naive in their programming, and some are a little more like, oh, yeah, the kids want to get into trouble. I don't mind that. Like, I think I can help them with that. And so it's I wouldn't say it's like, I guess one of the things I thought about was like Lord of the Flies, right? But Lord of the Flies is really dark and shows kids being really bad. And so these kids, they're a little nicer, and it's a little more along the ideas of like, what if they were all stuck together and they actually worked together in a positive way and helped each other, and they actually learn from each other, and all the kind of the good side of things.
Yeah, boy, I'm really hoping that we're going to have, kids are going to have a chance to come back together again and work with each other. It seems, with the pandemic and everything, kids are away from each other, and they're saying, well, if we open up school again, they can only be in groups of 10, and they have to stay together, and they can't play with anybody else. So this sounds like it would be a great, fun book to read to get your mind off all that craziness that's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the one thing that I think we can remember right now is the importance of books and reading. So, one of the things that we struggled with here was we were fortunate that our school was really good about setting up remote learning, but it's not the same on the screen. And staring at the screen all day, it's like it was exhausting. And so, we got to the point where like you can skip that class meeting. Why don't you just go and you can read a book, and like it's so helpful to have that, and then also just the stories that we can tell, and like books out there that even for kids, there's books that can kind of talk about struggles and kind of how you stay positive in the face of adversity, and I think that's something really important now too.
Yeah. One of the things I loved about books, and I talked with my kids when they were younger. They're adults right now, but one of the big advantages of books and graphic novels and comics, as opposed to other medium like movies and TV, is that books really give you a chance to get inside the minds and the personalities of the different characters and to see the full picture of what might be going on, not only right now in the character's life, but before, and all the other things that are contributing to their decisions. Whereas in a movie or a TV show, you have a half an hour or 90 minutes to kind of try to tell all that backstory plus what's going on right now.
Yeah, and I think, it's especially with graphic novels. Graphic novels have a way of controlling the pace of reading, and so movies, they kind of move at the same pace. Like unless you're going to pause and rewind and interrupt the flow that way, like you're kind of stuck with you start at this time and you end at this time. And with prose books, it's a little more up to the reader how fast they read. But comics can kind of, with the way panels are laid out and with the way how much dialogue is in each panel, you can kind of help the reader pace themselves, but still leave room for the reader to read at their own pace. And the other thing about comics that I really love is just how expressive they can be. And comics are really great. Cartooning is really great for showing emotion, and you can do it in a way that can be really funny and exaggerated, but still feel really real. And you can kind of the drawings of these characters can actually help the reader visualize what is going on inside the character's mind. And that's like, so I always like to have like a lot of humor and emotion in my stories.
It's interesting you're talking about pacing and how graphic novel or comic can kind of control, for lack of a better word, control the pace that a reader is moving through the story. Is that something that you're aware of as you're creating your work?
Oh, definitely. It's one of the things too. My editor that I work with, Phoebe A, is really great about keeping an eye on that, like, and having a sense of, is the story slowing down? Is there, like, so sometimes it's a case like there's too much dialogue happening on a page, and so it becomes a part where the reader is going to get slowed down by the text while the images are going a lot faster. And so it's definitely something like you kind of have to like really have a sense of, and and the more comics I make, the more naturally it comes. But even then, it's helpful to have outside eyes looking at it and saying it got slow here, or it felt like this part you need to take more time with this moment and let it have some impact.
Mm-hmm. We have a lot of authors who listen to the show, and a lot of self-published authors, a lot of indie authors, and I think one of the things you just said there about having some outside eyes, especially trained professional outside eyes, looking at your work and helping you develop it. That is the one thing that I want to encourage all the authors who are listening. I know it's one thing to get your friends to read and to get their feedback, but you're just going to get friendly feedback for the most part. They're going to tell you it's great, it's super. And meanwhile, if you have somebody who is professional, who has experience, sit down, take a look at it, give you some great advice. It can really elevate your work to where you want it to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think, writers' workshops is an idea that's been around for a long time, and I think before going to college and then I also pursued my MFA and worked with because I'm doing comics, worked with the writing department also. You realize just how helpful it is, because when you're reading other people's work and you have to verbalize why something doesn't feel right in their story, you can't just say this just doesn't feel right. You've got to be able to explain what about it exactly isn't working. And so I find that kind of idea of getting together with other writers and reading each other's work and really trying to look at the work with a critical eye can be really helpful. Not that I would always say definitely always show to friends too, because I don't know about you, but I have friends that aren't afraid to say yeah. And especially writing kids' books. I mean, kids are the most brutally honest reviewers around. I can't, when I did my Jedi Academy middle grade series, and I remember the second book came out, and it was the first time where I started getting letters from kids, and they would be the second book I really liked this. This was good. Not as good as the first book. I would give it, 6 out of 10. It's is that good? Did you like it? So I think, it definitely helps to have outside eyes. And the other thing is, when you're writing your own story, you're inside it to such a level that you aren't always aware of things you might be missing of getting across. And so you might know your character so well that you're not even putting in information about that character in the story. But if the reader isn't getting that information, they're not going to have the same sense of the story. And then you're wondering why people are reading the book and don't get that this is who the character is. It's because you didn't put that in there for the reader. And so I think that's the other part is having someone to just kind of check you on that.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned getting your MFA and going in. It sounds like you've had a sense that you wanted to be a cartoonist and do comics and graphic novels for a long time.
Basically my whole life. My mom saved everything, so I have all my childhood drawings, and from I think the youngest, I think I have a book I put together when I was 4 or 5,
Wow.
Just an actual little picture storybook. And I have things that I wrote, for school project where I said, when I grow up, I want to be a comic artist. And so I always loved drawing, always loved writing, loved reading. I loved books. And I knew I always wanted to make books in some form. And when I got into college, I kind of turned to fine art and started painting and thought I wanted to be a gallery artist, a capital A, or a fine artist. And when I was at the School of the Art Institute for my graduate studies, I realized like that the art wasn't saying what I wanted it to say, and it wasn't fun. And when I was a kid, drawing comics was fun. So just to take a break and clear my head, I just was like drawing this comic just to get away from the fine art stuff. And I realized like, oh, this is actually way more effective as a way for me to express ideas than anything else.
Yeah. That's really fascinating. There are a lot of pieces when we visit museums that are incredibly moving. And I know that, there's some, it looks like, the artist has worked for years just to get the right, lighting in it. And you go in some modern art museums, it looks like they spent 10 minutes on it. But I mean, that's such a different, medium and a way to express yourself than comics. Fascinating that you had that kind of detour in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is, you like, I'd look at those paintings and I was like, I want to make paintings like that. I want to make art that is just beautiful and overwhelming and moving. But I just came to the realization that I can't do that with painting. Mm-hmm. And whether or not people think I've done it with books, like that for me, like books are what feels right. And like I said, I've always loved writing and as well as drawing. And so comics, you get to write and draw, and it just feels like it's the right medium for me.
Yeah. Now, just one other, in case somebody hasn't heard, I've been very open on the podcast that one of the mistakes that I made with my son as he was growing up is I didn't appreciate the fact that the hours and hours and hours that he spent reading graphic novels and manga and comic books that he was actually reading. And and I wasn't trying to punish him or deter him from that, but I would go into the room and say, can you please read a book that doesn't have a picture with it? Once. just once. Do me a favor. But I didn't realize that, he loved it, and he was actually reading stories, and those stories had a lot of meat to them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, again, it goes back to, when you or I were kids, the material that was available was, no offense to any of it, but, like it wasn't written with the same depth. It's the same way you can have a novel that's a pulp, just quick read that's just kind of fluff. Mm-hmm. And you can have a novel that's very deep and has lots of layers. Same with movies. You can have a movie that's just a popcorn flick and you're just going to go to, have 2 hours of fun. Mm-hmm. And there's movies that are really make you stop and think. And at this point now, there's enough comics out there where they do all those things that a really good book or a really good movie can do in terms of just having like the intellectual stimulation. And comics are, they've actually started to do studies where it shows that in terms of helping kids to learn to read, comics are helpful because it's letting them see words in the context with pictures that helps them, figure out vocabulary in a way that is easier than with other books. But yeah, when people talk about oh, comics, they get kind of dismissive. I say like, well, when you're studying English in school, are you studying and you're reading these classic novels? Are you studying paragraph and sentence structure for the most part? No. Maybe at some advanced point in learning, you break down the style, but no, you're studying things about the storytelling. You're studying, character development and plot. And, the thing is that that a good comic will have all those things. Comics is just storytelling.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And we've heard so many folks tell us that for, kids who may be reluctant readers, kids who might be struggling somewhat, that comics really kind of opens the door for them and helps them develop a love of reading. It might not be a love of reading the classics, but it's still a love of reading and a love of learning. So don't do what I did. Appreciate, and I bought all the comic books he wanted, so he had access to them. But it is writing, and it's really wonderful. What are your kids? How old are your kids now? And are they the prime audience for Once Upon a Space Time?
They're I've kind of mistimed it. I guess I have a 7-year-old and a 13-year-old. So the 7-year-old is he's just on the lower end, like where I can read it with him and he really gets it, but he's like maybe just a little young. And the 13-year-old is just, he's heading off into the jaded teenage years, and he has like very particular ideas about what he wants to read. And, like right now he's reading his Dark Material series by Philip Pullman. And, so 8 to 12 is kind of the core range. But, it's funny because over the years, like with my middle grade series, like I've had kindergartners who are like, Jedi Academy is my favorite book. And then the Lucy and Andy series, the series that I did before Space Time, which is about, life in the Stone Age with a lot of science and research. I found that book older kids tended to appreciate because of all the science that was in it. So 8 to 12 is about the age range, but.
Yeah, and there are kids going to fall on either side of that can also enjoy it. And one of the neat things is I loved, my son and I, we did love reading comics and graphic novels together, or co-read them and then come together and talk about them. So this is, we talk a lot here on the show that reading with your kids, it doesn't stop when they can start reading on their own. It just takes a different turn and it morphs into something more beautiful.
Definitely.
Yeah. Tell everybody where they can connect with you, find out not only more about Once Upon a Space Time, but about all of the graphic novels and cartoons that you've created.
So my website is jeffreybrowncomics.com, although it does need to be updated with all the space-time material, but I don't know sometime when the world returns to normal, I'll try to get that done. But I'm on Instagram at jeffreybrownrq. If you want to get a peek, sometimes I have a little peek into my process or pictures of my cat mostly. So
awesome. Well, we've had a great time speaking to the author of the brand new graphic novel Once Upon a Space Time, Jeffrey Brown. Hey, Jeffrey, thanks so much for being part of the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for talking today.
That's a wrap for this episode of Reading with Your Kids. If this episode made you smile or gave you something to think about, please consider sharing a link to the show with someone you love. Write a 5-star review, and, of course, subscribe to the show wherever you find your favorite shows. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest, Margaret Gurevich. Please be sure to check out her middle grade novel, Yasha's Amazing Bar Mitzvah. Also want to thank Jeffrey Brown. Please be sure to check out Once Upon a Space Time. I want to thank my team, Chris Doherty, Jackson Saltalera. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every single time you read with your kids. I'll be listening to the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.